history or feeble attempts to define some of us as more American than others? We respect the past, but we don't pine for the past. We don't fear the future. We grab for it. America's not some fragile thing. We are large, in the words of Whitman, containing multitudes. We are boisterous and diverse and full of energy, perpetually young in spirit. That's why someone like John Lewis said that ripe old age of 25 could lead a Marty March. And that's what the young people here today and listening all across the country must take away from this day. You are America, unconstrained by habit and convention, unencumbered by what is, because you're ready to seize what ought to be. For everywhere in this country, there are first steps to be taken. There's new ground to cover. There are more bridges to be crossed. And it is you, the young and fearless at heart, the most diverse and educated generation in our history, who the nation is waiting to follow. Because Selma shows us that America is not the project of any one person. Because the single most powerful word in our democracy is the word we. We the people, we shall overcome. Yes, we can. That word is owned by no one. It belongs to everyone. Oh, what a glorious task we are given to continually try to improve this great nation of ours. 50 years from Bloody Sunday. Our march is not yet finished, but we're getting closer. 239 years after this nation's founding, our union is not yet perfect, but we are getting closer. Our job's easier because somebody already got us through that first mile. Somebody already got us over that bridge. When it feels the road's too hard, when the torch we've been passed feels too heavy, we will remember these early travelers and draw strength from their example, and hold firmly to the words of the prophet Isaiah. Those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on the wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint. We honor those who walked so we could run. We must run so our children soar, and we will not grow weary, for we believe in the power of an awesome God, and we believe in this country's sacred promise. May He bless those warriors of justice no longer with us, and bless the United States of America. Thank you, everybody.
Wow.
All right, the power of the word we by the President of the United States there, hugging and kissing former President George W. Bush and former First Lady Laura Bush as he waves to this crowd here. It was a booming applause and sound from this audience, hearing this president use that word we the people, we shall overcome, and yes, we can. And once again underscoring the message of this commemoration, that it was not one man's struggle, one man's step, but it was a collective. And it's that message that he says must carry on with the mission and the work still to be done. Political commentator Van Jones with me now. Athena Jones is also here, who had the opportunity to talk to John Lewis before this. And of course, presidential historian Douglas Brinkley is also still with us out of Austin. This president really did cover the map, didn't he?
It was extraordinary.
Everything from the sacrifice, paying homage to the former, the past and the still living civil rights foot soldiers, John Lewis, and reminding John Lewis that he is his hero. He's one of his biggest heroes, the president. His words.
The way he started. And this speech, I think, was extraordinary. This was a speech rooted in a deep patriotism. This was really a love letter to the next generation who may not understand what a broad achievement it is for a country to have these many kinds of people. It's a miracle every day to live in a country where you have literally every human ever born, every class, every faith, every sexuality, every color, every kind of person lives in one country, and we're all Americans. And so the president did a beautiful job of retelling America's story, including the pain, but he didn't let the pain have the last word.
It wasn't the deterrent.
It's exactly.
It was a motivator,
It was a motivator. And so I think for this young generation that may feel frustrated at times, post-Ferguson, etc., yes, you acknowledge the pain, but you don't let the pain have the last word. The pain can get you to a better place. And so I thought he did a remarkable job. He pushed against the cheap patriotism that would put Americans one against the other, and he embraced a deep patriotism that embraced every single kind of American. I thought it was an extraordinary speech. Extraordinary speech.
Douglas Brinkley, presidential historian with us. We heard the president talk about everything from the sacrifice that has been paid by these foot soldiers, making tribute to John Lewis. He ticked off the measures of progress and really challenged any doubters that if you think change has not come, and we're seeing the president now who's actually stepped right off that stage and moved his way right into the audience there, and he's getting a chance, and the people who have come out are getting a chance to get real FaceTime with him. You see a lot of cameras that have been lifted up. They're shaking hands. They are reaching their hands overhead, just hoping to get a touch of the president and the First Lady there.
Beatlemania over there. Looks like
really
Beatlemania.
Is. And boy, that just really made their day, because people clearly, Douglas Brinkley, you still with us now, people were riveted from this message, because this president underscored that if you think for a minute that there has not been any change since the 1960s. He said, ask your elders, ask your gay friends. And he really tipped it off, by paying homage to the firefighters of 9/11, Jackie Robinson, Sojourner Truth, Sacagawea. He made sure that this was a message of inclusion.
Yes.
Douglas, what's your analysis of what you heard from the president?
I think this is Barack Obama's I Have a Dream speech for the 21st century. It was brilliantly written, and he delivered it in a flawless fashion as if he was from the church pulpit. It reminded me a lot of a Walt Whitman poem, or Carl Sandburg, or Archibald MacLeish, that there was a poetic integrity to the words, and the way that he showed us all these flashpoints in American history, from Independence Hall to Selma and beyond. And as you pointed out, called so many great Americans and their contributions. And it was a speech of true inclusion, wanting to bring in gay Americans that protested and spilled their own blood, wanting to deal with Navajo code talkers, or the Japanese that had been interned in World War II but yet have transcended that in America. It was just really, I think, a stunning speech, and one that people are going to find published in textbooks and talked about for a while to come. I don't think it has policy implications, but just as a piece of oratory, it was a finely polished, well-crafted speech for the ages.
And it really was both delicate and direct, was it not, involving Ferguson? He said, yes, racial history still casts a shadow. And there was a common goal with Ferguson, the protection of the law. That was the parallel that this president made to a rousing applause here. Again, as we look at live pictures with the president going through the crowd here, thousands who have turned out here at the foot of the Edmund Pettus Bridge before he and the first family crossed the bridge. Douglas, your comments on the president saying, quote, racial history still casts a shadow.
Well, yes, and he had to mention Ferguson, and he did, but I didn't think he dwelled on it. I think Van's analysis before the speech was correct. He was framing this for the children, for his children and for future generations, and he wanted to give us all a little bit of a history lesson. He could have picked a dozen racially tense flashpoint spots in America today, but he wanted to, I think, honor the elders, as you put it. and did that in a great way. The spirit of John Lewis was here, and the very fact that Lewis had to have your hero speak before you is very strange, and the president seemed to want to up his game because of it, and to deliver all these words with John Lewis and others from the 1965 generation that were in attendance there. It turned out to be a very beautiful afternoon, not one reminding us of all of our problems of today, but reminding us of our ability to transcend those problems and how we've done it time and again in American history.
And he did. However, he did send a direct message, did he not, to the younger generation. He said, wait a minute, if you want change, number one, you also have to change your attitude. And number two, you have to vote. People did not sacrifice their lives. Blood did not pour on the Edmund Pettus Bridge for you to take advantage of, take for granted the right to vote.
It was, in the end, a voting rights address, and you're absolutely correct. He was in Selma, and that's what Selma was about, and he really goading a new generation. Don't take that for granted. I thought it was a little edgy and interesting when he talked about how many other democracies around the world do better in registering people to vote than we do in the United States, and in that way he felt we have a long way to come. You know, so in that way it's a voting rights address that he gave, and I think will be interpreted as that.
The president right now and the First Lady still making their way through the crowd here. They're not just shaking hands here. They're also talking to people. I see them stopping, and I see a young man holding up his little guy, and just reading the lips of Michelle Obama say, "How are you?" And that little boy is now talking to her, and she's engaging in a beautiful conversation with him. He'll never forget that. And, you know, to see the mix of generations here, Douglas, because we've talked to so many people who were 8, they were 10, they were 11, they were 12 when they walked the Edmund Pettus Bridge. They were following these foot soldiers. All they knew is that maybe this would be the gateway toward freedom. They wouldn't have to worry about drinking from separate water fountains anymore. They wouldn't have substandard access to movies in the theaters, is what many of them told me. But they found themselves to be a part of history, Douglas. And so many of those people are now in their 50s and 60s, and they are talking about how important it is for them to have brought their children and grandchildren to this moment. This is historical in so many ways. It spans generations, doesn't it?
The president used this as a teachable moment. Selma's been talked about because of the movie a lot, and it's generated, of course, the anniversary, a lot of talk. But if you went back, say, even 10 years ago and asked a 16-year-old in America what was Selma, you'd get a lot of shrugs. I don't think that could be said anymore now. What Selma stands for has now been injected fully into our contemporary events. And I thought that the president was careful not to make this about how our problems of the moment per se.
It's pretty loud. I wish I had the other one.
All right, Douglas Brinkley, presidential historian, thank you so much for being with me this afternoon. I'm Frederica Whitfield here in Selma. Again, you're looking at live pictures of the president and the First Lady talking to people. There is C.T. Vivian, a foot soldier right there before the First Family makes it across the Edmund Pettus Bridge. Our live coverage continues. Poppy Harlow in the newsroom up next.
But I shouldn't be hearing anything, should I?
Yeah, both of them don't have audio. Or they're working on it. They're working on it.
I hear it now.
All right, again, the President of the United States and Michelle Obama still making their way through the crowd. The plan has been that they would make their way from that podium and then start the family jaunt across that bridge. It takes roughly 10 minutes to walk the entire span. I've done it myself a couple times since being here. And for the president, it may be even quicker because they won't have traffic. They won't be walking on the